Welcome to the Holy Smokes Podcast, a show about faith, friendship, fine tobacco, and drink. I am Steve Ryder, and I am in Wayne Green's man cave, which you guys have named it officially.
Wayne's World, right on. Most excellent.
I'm with Wayne Green, who runs is one of the main organizers for the Holy Smokes Castle Rock group, and yeah, so I'm excited. Well, thanks for being on, my man.
Yep, no problem. Thanks for coming by.
All right,
thanks for the cigar too.
First question I open every podcast with: what you smoking?
I'm smoking a Daniel Marshall Red Label, and can I say where I got it?
Yeah.
Compliments of the Steve Ryder podcast or the Holy Smokes podcast?
Yes, yeah. So Daniel Marshall sent a box out of the Red Label. They didn't have any Black Label in stock, and so they sent some Red Label. I can't wait to try the Black Label, but what do you think?
Starting off great, or pertinent to the room here, most excellent.
Yeah, so I tried my first Daniel Marshall Red Label last Wednesday at the Colorado Springs group, and it instantly vaulted up to one of my top 5 all-time cigars. I mean, it was so smooth, and I'm more of a Maduro guy, and
right.
That one is a little bit lighter, and it's just smooth, buttery. It's just,
I agree. It's just great. It's starting off great.
Yeah. So, Daniel Marshall, check him out. I'm a fan. I have a Providencia Trinitas. So, Jim over at Providencia sent some sticks, and this is my second Trinitas that I've ever had. And I like it, but Wayne, you told me right when we got started a really cool story about having Trinitas.
Yeah, so Reed gave me a box of those, and the first one I had was good. I wouldn't say it was great, but it was really good. I put it in my humidor for about a year. Every time I pulled one out, they got better and better. But the last 4 or 5 sticks ended up with plume on them. And I mean, it's a beautiful sight, plume, when it's on your cigars. And each one I lit up was just awesome. I did send a picture to Reed with the... it's how we take pictures in Holy Smokes. Nice picture of the cigar with plume sitting on top of a glass of whiskey. So it was a nice way to say thank you for the cigar.
So Wayne, you're a Minnesota kid.
Oh yeah.
Where born and raised?
So my dad was in the service. So I was born at Fort Ord in California. Then we traveled all over. Went to kindergarten in Germany. Had a sister that was born in France. We ended up my mom was from Wisconsin, actually, Jim Falls, Wisconsin, and went to school for a little bit in Wisconsin, then ended up in Minnesota. So my relatives are Wisconsin, Minnesota.
Yeah.
That's where I spent my wonder years. I wonder why the heck I was there. But, yep, from Minnesota, became a Vikings fan, all that kind of good stuff.
So why did you go, why the Vikings? Why not the Packers? You had influences on both sides. Why?
It's a little cousin rivalry, All my cousins like the Packers. But,
okay, so you just like to be different.
Yeah, I like to be different. Plus,
I understand that totally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus, we spent most of our time in Minnesota. That's where we live mainly.
Okay. So where in Minnesota?
The cities, Minneapolis.
Okay.
In fact, our house was probably 10 blocks away from where the new USA Bank or US Bank Stadium is.
Okay. All right.
So could have walked there or rode my wheelchair, whatever.
Yeah. Now, when you say wheelchair, people that have not met you got polio as a kid, right?
Yeah, I got polio when I was 10 months old.
That young.
I was I was born in 53, late 53. So I got polio in 54. That's the year that Dr. Salk discovered the vaccine.
Oh.
Yeah. But he discovered it in 54, but it didn't come into usage until I think 56 or something like that. But yeah, my dad was stationed at Camp Roberts in California.
Yeah.
And the story goes, my mom called the doctors because I had fever and other stuff, and the doctor says, it was late at night. He says, he's just probably got the flu or cold or something. Give him a couple of aspirin and,
Yeah.
And we'll look at it in the morning. My mom said in the morning I was more or less crawling along and just dragging my legs behind me.
Oh, no.
So, and I don't know if it would have made much of a difference, but yeah, so I never really walked, on my own.
Yeah.
So as it goes, as my dad was traveling around, when we were in Germany, I was the March of Dimes kid and on the bass. I was cute as heck too. I had I had braces on both legs, and crutches, and I mean, everywhere I went, I just got treated with love. I got to tell you.
Now, what was it like for you as a kid growing up? I mean, we've seen in the last, I want to say probably 20 years, a real shift to culturally, as well as with the teenagers, really less bullying, more understanding of special needs kids, more understanding of kids, that have some sort of handicap, special need, whatever you want to call it. What was it like for you as a kid?
Well, mostly I got treated pretty well. I got treated better by the adults than... There's always bullies. There's always people that just, they're just kind of... It's just ignorance is really what it is. And I'm not so sure if I didn't have this handicap that I would have gotten really treated any different.
Okay.
'Cause somebody would have picked on me. But I always had a few people that picked on me.
Yeah.
But mostly, in general, people loved on me. I mean, you've met me. It's nothing but love, man.
You are a very, very special dude. I mean, I remember the first time I came up to the Castle Rock group, and just the hug I got from you and our conversations, and over the years, you are one of my favorite Holy Smokers. And
I appreciate that.
And I mean that seriously, even though you're a friggin' Vikings fan. Come on. But everyone has, their shortcomings.
Now, just so people listening to this understand what's going on, Steve's a Wisconsin fan through and through.
Yeah, I'm a cheesehead. Cheesehead by birth, Coloradan by choice, but my allegiances lie with the Packers, Badgers, Bucks, and Brewers.
Right. But my favorite hat is the Wisconsin hat because I still think the W stands for whiner. But anyway, it's fun to go back and forth with you. I like that.
You're moving down the ranks in terms of my favorite Holy Smokers. I'm just
didn't take much.
So, what kind of families did you grow up in? I mean, what did your dad was in the military? What did your mom do? Siblings?
So I have 5 brothers and sisters, including me. My family's pretty jacked up, to be honest. My dad died at 49 from alcoholism. And my mom, to me, was a saint, but I don't know if it was the times or whatever, but she should have got rid of him a long time ago. But my dad was really, really bad news. This is all stuff that accumulated over the years. My dad was, as it turns out, was a pedophile. He was a philanderer. I mean, he was always out chasing women. He could get his check on a Friday, and we don't know if we would see him that night or if we wouldn't see him for a couple of weeks, because he'd take his check and he'd be out doing whatever. It was just really bad news. My oldest sister was actually not my real dad, so it was his stepdaughter. I found out after my mom had passed away, which was about 3 years ago. My oldest sister and I are really tight.
Yeah.
But she had a secret she hadn't told me, that my dad had raped her. But, I can't tell you how many times he's been in jail. In fact, we left.
Was he in the military?
We weren't going to do is we weren't going to get baptized. We had already been baptized. Forget this baptism thing. We're not doing this,
Yeah.
So when he was stationed in Germany, the base commander he really loved me and my mom because of my disability and all that.
Yeah.
Well, my dad was a philanderer back then, and he was always getting into trouble. So much so that, we just found out about this, while my mom was pregnant with my youngest sister, my dad had got the base commander's maid pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah, so we just found out about 6 months ago that I have a half-sister who's now ended up in Northern California.
Yeah.
We just made the connection through the 23andMe kind of a thing. So this is the kind of nonsense that I went through growing up. My dad was into drugs, alcohol. He was physically abusive. And again, we left Minnesota in the dead of night because he had gotten into trouble, and this is back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Now, back in the 60s, if the law was after you and you crossed state lines more or less, they'd have a hard time finding it. I think most of the time they're just happy to have you leave their state.
Yeah.
So he had left the state and went to California, and he was in California for about a year, and then all of a sudden he shows up one day, and we had everything packed, left our house, and moved to California.
How old were you when your dad passed?
I'd say 26 or 7.
Did your mom ever leave him?
He did. They finally did get a divorce. I got so many stories on all that, but yeah, they finally got a divorce, and my mom remarried, my dad remarried, and both the marriages that they went to didn't last, so they both got divorced.
Yeah.
And there's stories that go along with that. And then my dad came back, and my mom and dad lived together.
Why?
Because my mom loved him. That's the only thing we could think of. But he was still a jerk. He was still doing the same stuff. So my mom was weak when it came to that part of it. So he lived with her until he died. And he had been in and out of the hospital. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how bad this guy was. The doctors would tell him he'd go into the hospital because whenever you die from alcoholism, it's kind of a slow process in that you're in and out of the hospital sick with liver problems or whatever.
Yeah.
And the doctors would tell him, you can't drink anymore. If you keep drinking, you're going to die.
Yeah.
So you got to promise or whatever, you got to commit to doing what you can to get off of alcohol.
Yeah.
He would drive home from the hospital and stop at a bar before he got home. So, I mean, he was indeed an alcoholic. So the last time he was in the hospital, we were all in the room, and he passed away in the room while we were there. And I was the last one to leave the room, and I went over and all I could do is just kiss him on the forehead. And that's where I was when he passed away. And then at the funeral, my sister, because you don't do this, you don't raise a family in this kind of environment without it affecting everyone, all your kids.
Yeah.
So while we were at the funeral, my sister, as it turns out, was on heroin, and her friends robbed the house while we were at the funeral and took all his guns and all this other stuff. So you talked about a messed up time in my life,
Were you messed up as a kid, as a young adult?
No, I mean, I did my fair...
How'd you turn out so normal then? How'd you turn out so loving and just the sweet dude that I know?
Well, I appreciate that. And I've had people, you're not the first guy to ask me that.
Because seriously, I know people all the time that they grew up in a garbage situation and it's post-traumatic stress and they follow the same familial patterns, generational patterns. And then I see these shining examples. Like one of my college roommates grew up in a very messed up situation. I mean, his mom was not healthy, his dad was an alcoholic, but yet he and his twin brother his identical twin brother had completely broken all of that. And they have the most amazing families. Meanwhile, the rest of the siblings, one's okay, one's not, one's kinda... How'd you do it?
So let me describe my siblings real quick. So my oldest sister was his stepdaughter.
Yeah.
And then I'm the next oldest. Then I have a brother below me who's had a lot of problems with alcohol. And then my sister, who was a heroin addict. And then my youngest brother, who's also had problems with relationships, if you will, alcohol, kid stuff as you're growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So they were all treated differently than me. Because of my disability, because of my handicap, and like I told you earlier, I was cute as hell. I've always been treated differently. I was loved on by everybody. Growing up, people just loved on me and took care of me. Or I'm going to jump forward real quick. Just like the guys in Holy Smokes, I mean,
yeah,
everyone takes care of me. But I've been loved on my whole life.
Who are some of those people that from your childhood as well as young adult years really were like the shining examples of people that you looked up to, people that you admired, people that you had a great relationship with?
It seemed like I always had friends in school that were like that. That could see me, or the natural instinct is to kind of be a protector, if you will, and stuff like that. I always had people like that were around me. And I had aunts and uncles and family members that, I was loved on by everybody. So to answer your question, I think the reason why I turned out loving, or whatever you want to call it, is because when you're loved on by people, just about everybody you meet, that's what you give back. It's been easy. You treat people the way that you're treated.
Did your dad treat you differently than your siblings?
My dad was pretty rough in that I think he didn't treat me differently. He was physically abusive. So, I remember one time whenever I said something to him and it didn't go over, I guess, he didn't recognize my sense of humor. And I was on my crutches, and he smacked me so hard I vaulted over the back of my crutches and slammed against the wall and just slid down. And it was a learning experience, because you just got to watch what you say. And, he wasn't of right mind, I don't think. But the one thing that he was really, really proud of what I did in school and things like that. He'd have people come over and he'd kind of like want to show off in that regard. Yeah. But
do you know anything about your dad's story? Like, what kind of, did he grow up in a rough childhood as well and just kind of pass that on?
Yeah, he had 3 brothers, and I don't think his dad was around. So I give him a bit of grace, because, I don't think his childhood was all that great. But between him and his brothers, they were all in the service. They all were trouble. They were raised in Albuquerque, and my dad told me, he says, we knew all the police. All the cops knew them.
Yeah.
His younger brother was in the Air Force. He was in a car accident, and I think he was the only survivor. I don't know if he was driving or not, but they were drunk. His older brother was a heroin addict, and this was back in the day. He lived till he was 90-something years old, but he was on, and he had been in prison a few times. Yeah. And again, my dad had done all kinds of drugs. So I think not having a father and a family really had an impact on him, as it does just about every young man, you know. But whenever the dad is there and he's that abusive, I don't know what's worse.
Yeah. So what'd you do after high school?
So I pretty much didn't really know what to do. We didn't have a family lineage where anyone went to college. Graduating high school was like the big achievement. So I ended up working in a factory.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Vicky. We were both working in a factory.
Your wife.
Yeah. And we were married when she was about to turn 19 and I had just turned 19. So we got married. We had a kid shortly afterwards.
Yeah.
And now I'm raising a family on factory wages.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around, and everyone that's working in this factory's been there for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I'm going, I cannot be in this place for 30 years. So I did go back to junior college, and I was really good at drafting in high school. So I thought, well, I'm going to take some drafting classes or whatever at the JC.
Yeah.
So I was there for a year and a half, and I did really, really well. Went out and started looking for work, and I applied at like 5 different jobs. I had 5 different offers. Looking back on it now, God was right there. I made the right choice. Mm. Probably 2 years after that, I had started my own company.
What year did you go
This
to junior
was,
college?
I think, 76 whenever I got out of junior college.
How old were you at the time?
I was probably 25, I think.
Okay.
23, I can't remember.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, just absolutely no idea, but it was the right, let's just say, Jesus has been very, very good to me. But I'm a guy who's more in the moment guy. I'm not a big picture guy where I can really see what way into the future, what's really going to happen. It's like, oh, I'm doing this now, and it's all good.
So how old were you when God got a hold of you?
I think it was like 51 or 52.
Wow. All right, so let's talk about those years between, kind of talk about that journey.
Well, so Vicki and I got married. We ended up having 3 boys. I raised them with the mantra was, my dad made a lot of mistakes with me.
Yeah.
I am not making the same mistakes with my boys. So we had them involved in sports.
Yeah.
And I was involved. I was assistant coach for baseball, believe it or not.
Nice.
I mean, I could get out there and do batting.
Yeah.
Hit balls to the kids and play catch and do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Physically, I didn't know any bounds as far as, I can ride ATVs, I've skied, I've done all this stuff, and we've had our kids involved. So my kids were raised with...
There are no limitations.
Yeah.
They saw it in you.
Unfortunately, they don't treat me like I'm a limited dude, I'm older now, and they still see me as... Oh, he can do this, he can do that. He's not,
That's wonderful.
So in those days, I started a business. What I do for a living is it's computer-aided design, and I design printed circuit boards specifically.
Yeah.
Back in those days, I had to stare into a light table. This is before computers.
Yeah.
So I'd stare into a light table for about 10 or 12 hours a day creating these artworks. And I had my shop was set up in one of the bedrooms at the house.
I love the fact that you said artwork, not design, it's creative for you, isn't it?
Oh, it's very satisfying for me. I love what I do because when I'm done, back in those days, it took more of a physical eye. You had to be able to manipulate this acetate tape and all this other stuff. And I could look at it after it was done, and I could see the beauty in it. So it was an outlet for my creativity. And now it's on a computer. And if you can picture, I start out with a blank screen.
Yeah.
And I can almost see it before I even start on it, how it's going to end up. And there's so much satisfaction out of it that I wouldn't go so far as to say I would pay to do it, but if it wasn't in my life, I would really miss it. So I'm 66 right now, and I don't plan on, say, quote, retiring, where it's an outlet for me.
Yeah.
And part of the outlet is when the customer is real happy with the work. So anyway, I started this business, and it kind of started, this is kind of another God moment that I can look back on. It started whenever I was in line to get a promotion at this company I was at, and I didn't get it. I didn't get it because the manager said, well, if I give you this promotion, then I won't have anyone to lay out my circuit boards.
Oh.
So he says, are you okay with that? And I said, not really. I said, if something comes along, I'm gone. 2 weeks later, I was gone.
Yeah. Gone where?
I went to I was so upset. I went to this shop where I was actually working in a warehouse. They just had a light table set up in there, and the guy had no business hiring somebody like me. He couldn't pay me.
Yeah.
So after he couldn't pay me, I was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And this is where God kind of stepped in. All of a sudden I get a phone call from somebody that I had worked for before, and they go, hey, I heard you're not working over at this company anymore. We got some work. Would you care to do it, as a consultant?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I'll do that. And then another company called from somebody, an engineer I knew went over there, and he goes, hey, we got some work. Could you help us out? Before I knew it, I was too busy. I was too busy, so I hired a couple of guys that would moonlight, and I could farm work out, and they were I'd look it over and all that. And then before I knew it, I was working, or I had bought my first computer. Back in those days, the computer cost like $150,000.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had to put my house on the line.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I got kicked out of the house because Vicki didn't appreciate having these massive computers in the front room, and so I got a suite. And then I ended up I had about 8 guys working for me, and I thought, well, now I have really made it. It was all me that was doing all this, of course. Yeah. Then I was, having to make payroll every 2 weeks, and there's an old saying where you haven't lived till you've made payroll, and started realizing that when my business was growing, that I realized that I needed a little bit more. I'm still missing something. I thought I had everything that I was really ever wanted.
Yeah.
A business, people working for me, and all that. But there
wife and kids. You have a great relationship with.
Oh, we were living the California dream too.
Where were you at in California at the time?
Mission Viejo.
Okay, Southern California.
Southern California. Had the house, the pool, the view. We were living the California dream. Yeah. But there was still something missing. And I noticed there was a few of my neighbors were, I was driving my son to school one day, and he asked me a God question. And I was raised Catholic.
Okay.
I call it raised Catholic.
Quote unquote, yeah.
Yeah. But we weren't going to church or anything like that. There was nothing there for me. And I don't want to say anything bad about Catholics, but there was just nothing there for Vicki and I.
Yeah.
So anyway, my son asked me a God question, and I'm going, I don't know.
About how old were you at the time, and was he?
Probably, I was definitely in my 30s.
Okay.
And he was, I think, 12.
Yeah.
12 or 13.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. And there was this thing called the Holy Spirit that must have just convicted me.
Yeah.
And I had noticed that there was neighbors that were stopping in at this church that was on the corner.
Yeah.
That I would go by almost every day. And I thought, there's something there for me.
Yeah.
So I called the church up, and we decided, the pastor was real nice. He said, yeah, come on by on Sunday and ask for me. And so we met with him, and this is kind of funny. So we've always gone to a Catholic church. You know, it's very holy water,
ritualistic.
Yeah. By the way, I had a hard time genuflecting in the Catholic church.
Yeah.
Couldn't really get down on a knee when I made the sign of the cross.
Yeah.
So I told Vicki, what we're going to do is we're going to sit in the back of the church.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to kind of go in incognito and just see how just check this place out, see how we like it.
What kind of faith journey did she have? She grew up Catholic as well, you said?
Yeah, we both I went to parochial school for 2 years, and she went, I think, just at least through her elementary years.
Yeah.
And that's another story, too, Vicky's past. But anyway, so we went to church, and we thought we were going to sit in the back, but we walked in, and all the old people were already there. So we were forced to find a seat kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
So it was Mission Viejo Christian Church. We found a place to sit down, and there were some people already sitting there, and they go, "Hey, how are you?" And they started talking to us, and it was like, you know, we're at church. Are you supposed to like talk out loud in the church, you know, before it starts? And anyway, they were very, very welcoming.
Yeah.
And then during the service, the pastor goes, "We have some new people today. You know, Wayne and Vicki Green. Could we have you stand up?"
Oh.
And it's like, oh my gosh. So there was, I think, another couple that also had. So we stood up, and everyone applauded. After church, everyone, I won't say everyone, but we had people coming up to us, introducing themselves, and they just loved on us right away.
So you weren't intimidated by that? You weren't scared off?
We haven't seen church like that. Again, we went in, we found a place to sit at the Catholic church.
Yeah.
And you go through, you listen to the sermon. You know, you're kneeling, standing up, doing all this. We didn't have a connection in the Catholic church. And again, I don't want to say anything derogatory about the Catholic church. We didn't make that connection.
Yeah.
And this was just so different to us. It was exciting. We wanted more of it.
Yeah.
And eventually, and the other thing we weren't going to do is we weren't going to get baptized. We had already been baptized. Forget this baptism thing. We're not doing this, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we were making connections. We had no idea what we were getting into. We started making connections, and we got involved in a home group.
Yeah.
Again, I can't even begin to tell you how we just did not have a clue. We were clueless.
Yeah.
And we started learning about the Bible. We started learning about this baptism thing.
Yeah.
And then we had one guy that was kind of leading our home group, and he says, "You know, you should really get baptized." And he was explaining it. I go, "Yeah, no, we've already been baptized. We've been there, done that." And the more we understood it, he goes, "You know, we could do this today. You got a jacuzzi in your backyard." And that Holy Spirit just said, "You have no good reason." So we got baptized in our backyard, and it was explained to me that after I was baptized, I baptized Vicki. And then later, I was able to baptize my son that started this whole deal.
Yes. Was he number 1, 2, or 3?
He was 3.
Okay.
The oldest was already moved out. And the second one was still living in the house. Unbeknownst to me, he had gone and gotten baptized with some of his friends. Didn't say a word about it.
Yeah.
And then I ended up baptizing my son and daughter-in-law. So it was pretty cool.
So you were in your 30s at the time when that happened, yet you said that God really got a hold of you when you were 51.
Oh, yeah, I guess I was closer to in my 50s.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was 50 whenever I got baptized.
Okay. All right.
When I started my business, I was in my late 20s.
Yeah.
So I was running the business until for quite a while.
Yeah. So, okay, how'd you end up here in Colorado then?
My oldest son's wife is from Littleton, and she was in California, and they got married, and they would come out to he would come out to Colorado, and he loved it out here. So whenever he had and he worked for me, he came out here and he saw an opportunity to move. So he did it. I didn't realize how much he hated California. He says, I got to get out of here. I can't take this anymore. And after living in Minnesota, I says...
Have kids at the time?
They had no kids.
Okay.
He'd send me pictures of snow on the ground out here, and I'd seen enough snow in Minnesota that I didn't want to ever go back into the snow.
I can identify with that.
Yeah. So he was sending me pictures, and I'm going, good luck with that. You know, we'll come out and visit.
Yeah.
But then they played a trick on us. They had a granddaughter. And by this time, my business was such that I can work anywhere in the world as long as I have an internet connection.
Yeah.
So we came out mainly because, well, not mainly, but because of the granddaughter.
Yeah.
And now we've got 4 grandkids.
Yeah.
And the timing was good, too. My youngest was graduating high school. He thought that he wanted to hang around California and had to explain to him that it's high school. This is where everyone takes off and flies away.
Yeah.
So he was on board with it. So all 3 of the boys are out here, and our family is out here.
How has it been now as a family having that common faith element between you all? I mean, you it sounds like you got a good family before that. Did it change things at all? Did it deepen that relationship?
I don't have a good barometer on that.
Okay.
My kids, they don't have the walk going on right now. And for any parent where that's not happening, it's heavy on your heart. It's real heavy on my heart.
Yeah.
And I'm at a place now, and it changes all the time, but I'm at a place now where I'm not responsible for their walk.
Yeah.
They have to take responsibility for their walk.
Yeah.
All I can do is set an example.
Yeah.
And my kids all know where I'm at. And they all love this Holy Smokes thing, too. You
Do
know?
they?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So my oldest son, when we have family gatherings and all that, you know, we pray, or I pray. And my middle son told my oldest son, and my oldest son relayed this to me. He goes, Brian really loves it when you pray. I'll take that. I'll take that all day. But
I'm sure you guys have some really good conversations when you have cigars together.
Now, how do you know we all have cigars together? We do, by the way.
They love Holy Smokes, he said. So.
Yeah, they love Holy Smokes. We do.
And I'm sure this room right here is a nice place to...
Christmas Eve, sitting in these chairs, me and 3 boys, and it's just... And the women are in the other room. It's just me and 3 boys.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It is.
So, women are in the other room. Any grandsons? In the 4?
Yeah, 2 grandsons, 2 granddaughters. They're all awesome kids.
What are their ages right now?
The oldest granddaughter, the one that really got us to come out here, is 14.
Okay.
The next one is 13. The 2 daughters are the oldest. And then the oldest grandson is 12, and then the youngest one is 7. Yeah, got to make sure I get that right. Anyway, I am just so blessed. I mean, God has blessed me in really every facet of my life.
Yeah. So, as someone myself who has made this journey from employee to solopreneur to having a team and people that I'm paying now on a regular basis, freelancers and staff, it has been a journey.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of those biggest lessons and stumbles and that you can relay to someone in the audience right now that's kind of on that journey themselves? They may be in that moving from employee to solopreneur, sole proprietor, LLC, just them, to making this journey where you had staff. What are some of those things that you can kind of pass on to them?
The biggest thing for me was how you treat people.
Yeah.
And I would say if you have any employees, treat them the way that you would want to be treated, not just professionally, but just, personally as well. When I had the staff of 8 people, this is really small potatoes compared to Amazon, but we all got
to start somewhere.
Exactly. What I recognized, I think, was people are showing up, employees are showing up, but to make money, to pay their bills, and they're there 8 hours a day at least. They need to be happy in that environment. And what I found was the productivity is better if they feel like they can take ownership of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone that worked for me loved coming to work. And the reason I can say this is because very, very rarely did anyone even take a sick day.
Yeah.
The way I worked it was, I understand you have kids. If you've got a soccer game to go to, or if you got a soccer practice to go to, or if you have to do some running around, just hit me up that you got to leave for a few minutes. You don't even have to tell me what it's all about. Just make sure you get your time in.
Mm-hmm.
Once a year, well, every Friday, I would take everybody out for lunch. Once a year, we'd go to Vegas. And I'd get everybody hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Give them a couple $100.
Families included? Or just
if they wanted to, but they'd have to share the same room.
Yeah.
And then, I'd take everybody out for a buffet while we were there. And we'd go out for a Christmas dinner and stuff like that. But in that time, I didn't have employees. I had friends working for me.
That's beautiful. And you're getting a little choked up when you say that.
Relationships are huge in my life, in everyone's life. But yeah.
You genuinely care about them.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
I'm around those people more than I'm around my own family. So it's got to be nice for me, too.
Yeah.
And I was gender neutral as far as my employees. I didn't care if they were male or female.
Yeah. So where's your business now in terms of how are things going?
So as I mentioned earlier, I'm 66.
Yeah.
And I haven't been here before. So I don't know if retirement is... I don't see myself as retiring.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to work less.
Mm-hmm. For
the last 30-some years, 30-plus years, I've had one employee who's worked for me from Oceanside. Last year, we've kind of cut the cord where I have him set up as he started his own shop. I've turned customers over to him. I've just kept a couple of customers for me. So I'm in the process of winding down.
Yeah.
Just want to keep doing what I'm doing, but not so much of it.
Yeah.
So that's what I think my retirement looks like.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it keeps me sharp, by doing something. It keeps the creativity juices flowing.
Yeah.
And the customers that I have are very appreciative of the service that I perform. A lot of them are worried that I'm going to retire and I'm not going to be around to do their work.
Yeah.
And my customers I treat the same way as my employees, if you will. I don't work for customers, I work for friends. One of the guys I'm doing work for now,
Yeah.
I knew him before he got married, before he had kids. Now his kids are off to college. You know, relationships, I think, is, if I were to give any advice to anyone that wants to take it, it's all about relationships. If you get that right, I think everything else falls into place.
Yeah. All right. Last subject that I want to ask you about. 10 months old, you got polio. That was something that your parents' generation had a genuine fear about overall, that their kid would potentially get this disease that would affect them the rest of their life, maybe even kill them.
Mm-hmm.
With the vaccine, when it came out, that fear dissipated. That's something that my generation and millennials and Gen Z, future generations, really haven't had to worry about.
Right.
Are you concerned about this anti-vax movement?
That's a tough question. As far as the flu vaccine goes, I've only had one flu shot.
Yeah.
That was just a couple of years ago, and I've done okay with that. I don't know if I really have a stance on that, because I've seen the good that comes out of a vaccine. It didn't help me.
Yeah.
And just by the way, from what I've been told, because I've had polio, that my kids have that antibody or whatever in them. Now, maybe this does kind of answer the question. They still took their polio shots or the vaccine. You could probably kind of ask this with the coronavirus thing going around. Would I take a coronavirus vaccine if it were developed today? I probably would.
Yeah. Wayne Green, thanks for letting me hole up here with you in Wayne's World.
Wayne's World.
And let's get to rapid fire questions.
Hey everyone, before we get to the rapid fire segment, I wanted to reshare a note that Kay and I got from an 80-year-old listener that lives in Southeast Kansas and still works in his small-town family business. He told us, I really lack male friendships because so many of my friends have passed the last few years, so I would value a group of men to spend time with. I'm learning some valuable lessons through the podcast and wish I was 30 rather than 80. I plan to stay tuned for more interviews. May God bless you and your group in 2020. He also talked about how he wrestled with the concept of men and women partaking in fine tobacco and drink because of the church and denomination he grew up in, but the podcast is changing that. When I showed this to Kay at his house recently, we both started tearing up. This is my why for doing this show. So if that moved you, would you consider partnering with us? Kay and I want to develop the website to better facilitate groups. We want to travel and get your stories for the podcast. We want to get back to doing 2 episodes a week, but we need your help. There are 2 simple ways you can help us out. Become a regular supporter at patreon.com/holysmokes. That's patreon.com. For as little as $5 a month, you can get early access to episodes, ad-free versions of the podcast, free swag like a Holy Smokes t-shirt, and more. That's patreon.com/holysmokes. You can also make a one-time tax-deductible donation at paypal.me/holysmokesclub, and both of those links are in the show notes. Thanks.
Rapid fire. Fire. Here.
Cigars or pipe?
Cigars.
I figured I know that answer. Favorite cigar?
Oh, that's a tough one. I really like the Liga Privada number 9. I have so many favorites, though. Probably like a lot of other cigar smokers.
Best dollar for dollar smoke?
Probably the Leaf by Oscar.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I like that one.
I would like them to become a sponsor on the Holy Smokes podcast. Expensive cigar you've ever smoked?
Did I have to pay for it? The most expensive cigar I had was the Cohiba Bihique. Yeah. Actually, that was compliments of the senator from Colorado Springs.
Ah.
Owen Hill.
Owen.
Yep. Thank you, Owen.
Your go-to place to get smokes.
I'm an online guy. So I also like the Shark, the Fuente Shark number 77.
Yeah.
So I get those from Tampa Sweethearts.
Favorite liquid pairing with your smoke?
Whiskey.
What kind of whiskey?
Oh, there's so many good ones. I'm just not all that picky.
Yeah.
It's got to be a good whiskey. I don't want to have it interfere with a good time, as long as it's whiskey.
Most memorable cigar experience?
Gosh, I had, just off the top of my head, because we were talking about Owen Hill,
Yeah.
I'll talk about the day that I met Owen at Churchill's with Demetrius and Kay
Yeah.
and Nathan. I was smoking a Serie D,
Yeah.
number 4, and Owen Hill had to get back to the shop, and he says he didn't have time to smoke the Bahique, so I gave him a Serie D.
Yeah.
So that was a good time.
All right. Marvel or DC?
I'm a Marvel guy.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Oh, Star Wars.
Favorite food?
The right answer is to say anything my wife puts in front of me, but I love a good steak.
Dogs, cats, neither, both?
Dogs.
Nickname growing up or as an adult?
Gimpy.
Gimpy?
Gimpy, yeah.
You're smiling when you say that, so it doesn't look like it's...
I won't say making fun of myself, but putting people at ease with my disability. And I love it when people jump on that bandwagon and they give it back to me, because I see it bring a smile to their face.
Yeah.
I'm gimpy.
So you have a brace on one leg
Right.
and not on the other. What was that journey like?
So I had polio from the waist down. Both legs are affected. I used to have braces on both legs.
Yeah.
And one day, I used to go to Shriners Hospital. I wanted to put a plug into Shriners.
Yeah.
They made a huge impact on my life. One day we were there in the hospital, and the doctor said, "Oh, he doesn't need a brace on his left leg. But this leg is still very limited. I can't lift it up." Anyway, it is what it is.
What's one unusual fact that few people know about you?
I get the impression people think I'm happy all the time. I'm not. I'm like everybody else. But I'd say 99% of the time, God is good. I mean, God's good all the time, but I struggle like everybody else.
So I just found out one other fun little fact about you. Because of the polio, you have to get different size shoes.
I do. A little bit of background on that. So when I was in the 4th grade, well, I was young. Yeah, I think it was for the 5th grade. I had staples, what they called staples, in my left leg.
Yeah.
And what they did was they scraped my growth plate on my left leg, because on my right leg I had a 2-inch lift on my shoe.
Mm-hmm.
Because my legs were unequal length. So the idea was to scrape the growth plate so that my right leg would catch up.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened, where my legs are equal length. That's one of the reasons why I'm so short. But one of the other things that happened was my right leg hasn't grown like it should have. So I wear a size 8 on my right leg, on my right foot, and then I wear a size 11 on my left foot. So I have to buy 2 pairs of shoes. So my whole life I've had to pay for 2 pairs of shoes. And it's not only that, but they have to be the same style.
Yeah.
With 2 different sizes.
Yeah.
So that can get to be hard to find in itself. So I've always paid for 2 pairs of shoes until a big shout out to Skechers. Skechers allows me to go in and buy 2 pairs of shoes but pay for 1. So Skechers, shout out. And they have a good selection.
Yeah. Are you a reader?
I'm a listener. So I've been listening
Audiobooks?
to audiobooks. Reading puts
Favorite
me,
books? What kind of books do you like to listen to?
Some of my friends are going to laugh. I'm still listening to George Washington. It's a long book.
Which one? Is it the Ron Chernow?
Yeah, the Ron
I
Chernow.
just finished that one, and it is outstanding. What an incredible human being.
Yep.
I mean, as a military tactician, he was very subpar. He almost kind of lucked into winning. He basically lucked into winning that war. But as a rallier of people, as a general in terms of keeping that army together with all of the things going against them. I mean, you had an ineffectual Congress that couldn't get the states to support the war financially. I mean, the Articles of Confederation were it was something that was feckless, ineffectual.
So what I'm getting out of it,
Where are you at in the book right now?
the Revolutionary War has ended, and they're starting to form a government.
One of the fascinating things about that book that I found out that I did not realize was that the Congressional Congress could have been deemed an act of treason because of the Articles of Confederation. And so there was a great deal of threat for those meetings.
Oh, yeah.
That to me was absolutely fascinating, that Washington and all of those people that were involved in that Congressional Congress were, in effect, almost treasonous against the Articles of Confederation.
So what I'm getting out of it is leaders are flawed and they make mistakes.
Yeah.
But there's many times that Washington should have just given up.
He wanted to.
Yeah, he wanted to.
He wanted to after the war. He wanted to retire and not
Right.
be a part of the Congressional Congress and become president and all that stuff.
But just like today, our leaders are flawed, and I guess the good ones make it.
If you were arrested with no explanation, what would your friends and family thought you had done?
Oh my gosh. Well, with today's environment, they probably would have thought that I hugged the wrong person. You know.
What has Holy Smokes meant to you?
Well, it's been awesome in the respect of when I'm in a group, whether it's just 2 guys or 20, I can look around the room and I can't find a guy that I just don't like, if not love. It makes it so much better smoking a cigar because you're going to be around for a couple hours at least to be in that environment. I just love all the guys. And whenever if there's something inappropriate said by somebody, because we're not perfect, I just hope that when I say somebody, it's probably going to be me. But if it's somebody else, I just hope that there's enough grace to go around. So I know I've said some things that I think are funny that don't always hit the mark. And I always worry about I might offend somebody or they might have taken it the wrong way. And so much so that I've gone back to them. And
Which you've done to me one time, and I was like,
yeah. It's probably about the Wisconsin thing. I don't remember. But
Which is something that I appreciated. I mean, even though for me, it helped to elevate a level of respect for you that, whoa, all right, this dude's able to, look back and just make sure everything's cool and just make sure that, I wasn't offended. That's something that's admirable.
Well, I'm a little guy. I don't want to get my butt kicked either. You kind of tower over me. But, I'm real sensitive to hurting somebody else's feelings. And just in general being sensitive to other people's feelings. And the guy I feel that is in the brother, who's my brother in that regard, is Paul Felitis.
Paul, oh, yeah. Yeah, for any listeners that haven't heard that interview with Paul, go back. That is an absolute must listen to. I think it's episode number 7. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I think it's Paul Felitis. An amazing story. So you guys meet here, and we talked about this on a previous episode focusing on the Castle Rock group. But for people that are traveling to Colorado, or they may be in the Colorado area and want to kind of just check out the Castle Rock group, you guys meet every Friday, noon to 2:30. There's a Holy Smokes Castle Rock group on Facebook specifically, and you guys also post in the main Facebook group.
Right.
Talk a little bit about, that group, and anyone that's interested can obviously go back and listen to that Castle Rock episode. But talk a little bit about the group and when you guys meet, where you guys meet.
So in the summer, we generally meet on the back deck of my house. And if you were to show up, my wife Vicky's awesome. She usually makes some good food to eat. There's always libations, and there's good conversations. And if you don't have a cigar, and I'm not the only one, but we have cigars here for you, so don't worry about running off somewhere. And then in the winter months, we used to meet here in this room, but we've had 16 guys in here twice smoking cigars, and the system wasn't meant for 16 puffers. And so in the winter times, we meet at Smoker Friendly in Castle Rock, and you can Google it, but they've got a nice lounge there that seats probably, I don't know, they can get 20 guys in there if they had to. But Demetrius has opened up his house. He can get a few guys in there. His smoking room's awesome. And when he gets his backyard finished, I'm pretty sure we're going to be meeting either my backyard or his backyard. And then we have another guy, Alan McKinnon, who's opening up a place. He's in Larkspur, which is fairly close to Castle Rock.
Yeah.
And Neil and Alan have both opened up their place. But if you're going to come by, check out Facebook to find out where we're going to meet.
All right, last two questions. If you were to have a holy smoke with any three people throughout history, living or deceased, who would they be? Can't name Jesus.
Well, for sure, Churchill. And you probably get that one a lot.
Yeah. Why?
I think I'd want to have a cigar with him I love humor. And I have a feeling he had a great sense of humor. And I'd like to have the opportunity to pick up on that. The other person is I would have liked to have had one more cigar with my brother. Passed away, I think it was last year. And that's another big story, but one more cigar. And then the other one, believe it or not, I'm a political guy, political junkie.
Yeah.
I'd like to have a cigar with Trump on the golf course. I can't play golf, but we could just ride around, Mar-a-Lago or something, smoking a cigar.
Churchill, your brother, and Trump. All right, final question. If we're to meet 1 year from today, and I got a bottle of your favorite whiskey, what are we cracking that thing open to celebrate?
1 year today, if I even had one of my kids come to me and say, and I could just tell he was all in for the Lord, I'd even buy the champagne. But yeah, that'd be awesome.
All right, Holy Smokers, we have a prayer point for Wayne. Wayne Green, thanks for letting us hole up here. I love you, my man. You are one of my favorites. Thanks for being on the Holy Smokes podcast.
Thank you, and I wish I could say I'd pray for Wisconsin, but I can't do that. I love you, brother.